Hey Arnaud, we're here at Expressive E, where we see the Osmose. The Osmose is, well, it's not new, we know that, but people still love to hear it and love to hear about it. So how are things going? How's shipping going? Are people getting their units now? What's happening?
Yeah, pretty well. I think it was an important phase for us because in January, and in December 2022, we started to deliver the first units to the original backers. And we've reopened new pre-order and reservation rounds. And now the deliveries are going well. We're progressing through them, and the lead times are getting somewhat, I would say, smaller than what they used to be in 2019.
Yeah.
And so right now we're working on, of course, normal post-release stuff like fine-tuning the firmware and getting feedback from users and spreading the word around.
And how's that going? I mean, because it was a nightmare of production for you guys. I mean, you were just getting ramped up and then COVID and all that stuff. How are users responding? I mean, what are people asking most for? What are they most appreciative of?
Yeah, so of course I think the big thing is about, I would say, the keybed itself. What people love the most is the ergonomics. The fact, that, of course, you can bend. I don't know if that's the most relevant preset, by the way, that I took for that. But the fact that people can bend the keys, the fact that you have continuous control, so meaning that you can produce sound as soon as you brush the keys. I think that's the big thing about the Osmose. And also the built-in sound engine that was developed by Haken and that we've used for creating the sound design of Osmose. I think that's a big deal because most of these MP controllers and synthesizers are actually, need to be linked to computer to function. So that's the big deal to have a standalone one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as for your second question for improvements or things that people would like to have more, I think the more sounds, people are crazy. They want, since each preset is more like an instrument than, because you can control it with your fingers and have your fingers act as like modulations and envelopes. People are very curious to see it implemented with new kind of sounds. And of course, the MIDI control functions. We got a lot of questions about that because there's a lot of curiosity about how would that type of synthesizer and controller would function with big software synthesizers and classic hardware stuff. So it's something that we're working on, integrating new features.
Well, yeah, because of course the internal resolution of the control is much higher than the MIDI spec, right? So
yes. Yeah, it's something there's a lot of development to do and, just a lot of connections to be made with other manufacturers to see how we could integrate that and how it would react to other big names, in the industry.
Well, it's always nice to see how people play these, and obviously we've seen Christoph, we've seen other people play them. You've got a few favorite patches, perhaps you could give us some
Yeah,
sound.
of course. What I'd like to show you, because most of the time, we show the nuance and how, different a patch can be if you approach it with like softness and stuff like that, but I also wanted to show how the expressivity and the keybed could be played with more classic, bass sounds or lead sounds, more bread and butter sound as well.
Right.
I'll of course show the some original ones, but I also wanted to show to people that the Osmose is very capable of producing, classic sounds that still benefit from the whole expressive keybed, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it certainly does.
All right. So I think we're gonna try first one. Not about one, I think. The flute and reed. The Bansuri one is one of my favorite sounds. It's a flute type of sound. What I really like about that preset, I would say, and it's not specific to that preset, but it's still very showed pretty well in there, is the press glide function.
Yeah,
what
that's
I was
a nice
showing.
one, isn't it? The faster you press that, the faster.
Yeah, basically it's like you could compare it to classic portamento that you have on most synthesizer. It's just that it's non-time fixed, if I can put it that way. You're modulating the time with your fingers, you're defining the transition from note A to note B, which is pretty
so
cool
it's
for
the travel in the way the key and how far or how quickly you travel the key.
Yes,
the
yeah,
next
yeah.
key down. Ah,
Yeah,
okay,
and
right.
it's funny because for most people that have taken, classical piano lesson or just like piano lessons, it's really that wrist movement that most teachers are talking about, to get like a good quality of sound. It's the same motion. You're really pivoting from one
That's
note to
interesting.
another, so it's
I
funny.
mean, you mentioned technique there. Do you are people? Are you finding that people are adapting very quickly to the new? Because it is a new technique, isn't it?
It is. It's a good question because we didn't want we wanted people to be able to access expressivity, but we didn't want them to be trapped by it. So let's say, for instance, that press glide feature that I've just showed. Maybe you don't want it, Well, you can just disable it, and then if I just go, you have both octaves, playing polyphonically, and same for the sensitivity. You might not want to use the bending. Like right now, I'm at one semitone, but you can pretty much disable it, So, of course, people, when they don't need it, they're not forced to play with expressivity, even though it's still a big thing in the keyboard.
Is that per patch or global, that setting?
Well, you have a freeze function if you go there, like the little spider net that you see, the icon there. You can freeze it. So if I switch presets, it will be the same. So it's pretty cool, and it's preset specific. So when you save it for, let's say, a user list when you're playing live or whatever, you'll have specific settings of sensitivity for each preset, which was important. And to get back to your original question, it's funny because there's no strict correlation between, I would say, the musicianship, or the proficiency of a given player with the way they react or adapt to expressivity.
Right.
Of course, professional pianists, people that have really worked on dynamics, on exploring, relation to pitch and stuff like that, tend to adapt faster to the keybed. But it's funny, I see that people with backgrounds, let's say in singing or guitar, plucked instruments or instruments, tend to adapt a tiny bit faster because they have
a feel,
a feel for dynamics. But I would say that most keyboard-only players will adapt pretty easily. Then it's just a matter of how accurate you want to be on the long run. But it's not frustrating. You can get used to it in a few minutes, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Another couple of sounds?
Yeah, of course. Favorite of mine is the Bass Monster one. I like it because it's a bit more... It's gnarlier, I would say, and it's really a classic bass sound. And I wanted to show that aspect of Osmose as well. It's capable of producing big, fat, analog sounds as well.
It's interesting because a lot of the presets we hear are quite brittle sounding.
Yes.
Because of the physical modeling nature of a lot of the presets.
Yeah, that's another side of the Osmose. It's, of course, as you said, the sound print, is very ambiguous, multi-layered, these pads with shimmers, a lot of stuff happening. But I also wanted to show, that if you want good chunky, bass sound, it's pretty.
Nice.
And what I like is that even though it's a bass sound, depending on how you attack it,
Still,
you're not forced to have a big attack all the time. It can be a bit more ambiguous, and that's really what I like about, using Osmose with more classic sounds as well.
So, I mean, speaking of sounds, I mean, one of the things that is also big, the Eagan Matrix is quite a sort of impenetrable interface for many people. Are you looking at ways to maybe make versions of that are easier for people to kind of gain access to making their own sounds?
So of course, a big part of Osmose are the ergonomics. When you look at the menu, what you've just said is that we wanted to make an impressive sound engine, such as the Eagan Matrix one, accessible through the use of presets, of
Yeah, I guess
macros
you
as
need
well.
a computer really to get to the bottom of it. That's what I was
Yes,
thinking.
yeah,
but-
you have the macros that are accessible in the Osmos, but for the moment you don't have, onboard, I would say, advanced edition,
No,
directly
no, sure.
onto the unit. And as for the Eagan Matrix right now, of course we're working, on getting things, I would say, as a whole for
Yeah,
Osmos
I
more
guess the thing is, it's not.
ergonomics.
I mean, it's not your sound engine,
But-
but I mean, is it possible to gain computer access to the Eagan Matrix as an Osmos user? Can you buy?
Yes, yes, of
Is
course.
there an editor for it, for instance?
Yeah. When you buy an Osmos, when you receive your Osmos, and you just go to your customer account on our website, you register it, and then you have the opportunity, to access the software and to edit sound
okay.
and learn it. It's just that, as you said, the learning curve is somewhat steep at the beginning, but it's also very rewarding because you get to unlock these new kind of sounds that are, especially if you look at the pad sounds and the SFX sounds, that are not necessarily easily achievable with other engines. That's also the richness and the beauty, I think, of the Eagan Matrix.
Well, sounds like a cue for another patch. What have you got?
Well, that's a good transition, as you said. Then I think I'll go for pad 1. I think they are probably my favorite ones. Let's go. Astral Titans. Yeah, I think that one's pretty cool. Well, it's more of a lead sound, but
Sort of orchestral. That's pretty massive. Yeah.
yeah. I think I'm going to show another one that is a bit more pad-like, because that one was a bit... It's funny because it's the first one that you have on the Osmos when you happen to start it, but I think it's one of my favorite because it's very ambiguous. It's called Abyss Lands, and yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, especially if you move it with your finger and modulate it. Just so many layers, and I'm just at the moment just playing the original sound, but if you move the layers, because right now I switch from the preset menu to the synth macros and effects, if you just happen to modulate the layer speed, the structure, you see there's movement with a filter opening up and closing up. Just a lot of an organic quality, I would say, to it. There's stuff moving.
Nice. One more patch and then we should probably call it a day.
Of course. I'm hesitating. Are you feeling percussive or SFX oriented today?
Let's try some percussion.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll try to be quick on that one, but it's also a big part of the DNA of Osmos sound, I think, is the hybrid quality of sounds, like half acoustic sounds and half, I would say, electronic. And that one is a very good example because it's a percussion sounds, but in which you hear that there is some kind of synthetic action going on. So. See, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's sort of non-pitched, but
yeah,
expressive,
a bit ambiguous. That if you press it really hard, you can still get a pitched sound. But if you just play on the surface and be very sharp, and you are very sharp in the attack, you get a fully percussive sound. So that's what I like. Depending on how you attack it, you can get very different results, I would say.
Oh no, thank you so much. That was really
thanks,
interesting.
Nick.
Cheers.
Cheers.